That was MC Yogi, and I got to say, Phil, that was a lot of fun for me because to hear somebody who's younger, really from another generation, a millennial, that is that excited about spirituality and has expressed it in the language in the of his generation through hip hop music and all. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, I do too, very impressive how grounded he is in the traditions and the teachings. And to me, it's just as I said on the show, you know, people absorb these teachings that come to us from India, and they take them deep into themselves, and it's going to be expressed to the extent that the person expresses it in his or her own way, with his or her own background and his or her own tools. And in this case, it comes out in the form of hip hop and his teaching of yoga. So it's just part of the long tradition of taking these teachings and adapting them. And the
Yeah, yeah.
question is, are they adapted faithfully and skillfully, or are they adulterated and abused? And in his case, you can feel the sincerity
Right, right.
and the
And he mentioned that, performing even to Hindus, Indians coming to America, that for the most part the response has been great. But the one thing that stood out for me, and I had this picture in my mind. Imagine, Phil, you grew up in Brooklyn. I was born in Jersey City, right across the river. But imagine in Brooklyn, Prospect Park, if when you were like 12 years old, 15 years old, you would have seen, 5,000 people doing shoulder stands and yoga posture. It was unthinkable. So that makes me believe anything is possible in this life. Anything is
that's
possible in this
true.
world.
I know. It really is amazing. And there's a lot of talk. Some of it is loose talk about cultural appropriation. And there's people, even go to the extreme that, Westerners shouldn't do yoga, you know, or and some of it is um, it's legitimate concern that these sacred traditions can be um, adulterated and demeaned and used for commercial ends by people who don't respect the culture from which it comes, and who it may even demean the culture from which it comes, and that there is some of that, and it's a legitimate concern. But when it comes to people like MC Yogi, and where the tradition is honored and respected, and in fact revered, then it's a form of adaptation that
Right.
is respectful.
Right. I agree. I mean, his performance, his what he does comes from an inner thirst for spiritual experience, and to share that with people. And when people say that, it would be like, okay, Italian opera. All right. Okay. So if they take a great opera, a great aria, and they turn it into a dog food commercial song, okay, maybe
Yeah,
that's not appropriate. But to say that
right,
only Italians, only Europeans can sing opera, and people from
right.
Africa and South America and North America can't. It's pretty outrageous. I
But
think it's
it's a good example, Dennis, because many famous arias have been turned into popular songs with English lyrics.
right.
I remember, as a kid hearing certain songs that, my parents would sing or was on the radio, and, Frank Sinatra or somebody be singing it. And then years later, I'd hear it as part of an aria. And I'd say, "What? That's that tune from that
Yeah.
song."
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
but it's done with respect, and it's always been that way.
Right.
I mean, that's just the way it is.
It
People
is.
borrow, especially artists. They're always borrowing
Right.
from things.
And the bottom line is he will reach people, he will touch people, he will get people interested in
That's right.
sincere spiritual, devotion, spiritual seeking, because of what he does that you or I or nobody else could reach. And I think
That,
that's fabulous. And
yeah, I
you
agree.
got to go with the language of the times. And I'm looking for. I've listened to him before, but now I'm really going to listen, and I'm going to listen to the lyrics and all. And I would love to see him in concert and sad and watch the reaction of the crowds, younger people, older people, who's ever there. And I think it'll be fantastic, and it's a great way to get into discussion with people about what
Yeah,
he's singing about and what the deepened values and meanings are. Because everybody's, I believe, everybody, it's built into their DNA that they're looking for something deeper. They're looking for true spirituality, and
yeah.
it's expressed in a many different ways.
I know. I did see him perform once, and he's very good. As you can imagine, and the audience responds. Some of them are responding, to the rhythms and the beat, and it's
Hmm.
danceable, moving stuff. But in the contexts that he performs, like the yoga festivals and all that, people understand the lyrics and they're getting something out of it. And some of it is very clever.
Right.
I mean, I've seen audiences have a lot of fun with the lyrics. And
Hmm.
and if you take something like the story of Ganesh or Hanuman, you can read it and it's interesting.
Right.
But this is a medium that young people are familiar with. You
Right.
and I didn't grow up with hip hop.
Right.
I have trouble following the lyrics sometimes, just like my parents couldn't follow
Right.
the lyrics of the Beatles or the
Right.
Stones. But when you pay attention, you can really appreciate
Yeah,
it.
yeah, and you bring this out in your book, American Veda, and all about like the Beatles and other groups that sang about spirituality. And that's what introduced spirituality to me. It was a language I understood, and music is very powerful. This past weekend, my wife and I went to the Chicago Gospel Festival, and there were people working the crowd, and they were doing some of it was almost like hip hop and all, but they were just they through music through. The lyrics in the music they were doing, they were really getting people to go inward. And
Yeah,
he's doing the same thing. And I think it's especially complicated to do with Hindu, Indian, Buddhist philosophy, but he does it. And like you said,
yeah.
he's incredibly creative
Yeah,
in how he does
and
it.
you think about it, music has always been a medium for uh, transmitting spiritual experience and spiritual ideas. You can go back to, as you mentioned, the Gregorian chants, Bach, the Passion of Saint Matthew, and the all the requiems, and I mean these are just the forms of their time, and now
Right. Because
why
when
not
I,
hip hop?
yeah,
I
when
mean,
I,
John Coltrane did it with jazz, so
right.
why?
Why not? And I'll tell you, the other means of of communicating with spirituality young people, like when I was a kid going to Catholic church, and there would be a priest up there giving the most boring lecture that one can imagine, usually with a thick like Slavic or Italian accent or something like that, Polish accent. You didn't know what he was saying. You sat there for 15, 20 minutes. It drove you away from spirituality. So here's
Right,
something that really brings people in, they can relate to, and then they'll go from there. Then they'll read, as he said, Siddhartha, and then they'll read autobiography of a yogi. Then they'll read a Bhagavad Gita, the Ramayana. This and it's really attracting them to knowledge that's universal. And I actually
right,
thought his answer about what the different deities meant to
yeah.
him is a question you asked. I thought he
Yeah.
gave quite an insightful and brilliant answer to that.
And yeah, I agree. And another thing about MC Yogi that's of no doubt a lot of value in reaching young people is his own story. His own story is a great redemption story, from juvenile delinquent group home kind of
Hmm.
experience to a bona fide and genuine spiritual path. That's a great message
Right,
that
it's a
I'm
great
sure
message,
hits
and
home.
there's a verse in the Bhagavad Gita. I don't remember exactly where it was in the Gita, but in the first few chapters where it says, "No man is ever so lost that he cannot benefit from the transcendent, from that his spiritual depths." And
Right.
that's his. He's lived that message, and it's a message to other people. Doesn't matter where you're starting, and this is what we've seen with all the people we've talked to. People have had all sorts of experiences, and a lot of them not such great experiences, a lot of suffering, and yet oftentimes those experiences bring them to a place where they can only turn toward their spiritual self, and
Yep.
I think that's very important. So, hopefully we
Very
are helping
good.
getting that message out. So
Okay.
good one. And we got
Listen
lots.
to Spirit Matters, folks.
Yes, Spirit Matters at spiritmatterstalk.com. And we're all over social media now. Tune in. Thank.
Okay.
Good one. Talk to you
I
soon.
will.
All right. Bye.
Thanks, Dennis.